oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, is there a bigger can of worms than the Palestine-Israel conflict? I don't think there is. Let's talk about it. Uh, I'm gonna provide my perspective, my view, my personal opinion on this extremely complex subject. By no means is this video going to be a full complete account of my view, and by no means is it a full complete view of the situation. That is nearly impossible to give you here. So you may look at my name and think, well, this guy's biased, right? His name is Arab. He must be biased. Look, watch the full video. That's all I'm saying. Watch the full video, even if it triggers you. Okay, let's get started. First of all, briefly, what's going on here? Well, what's going on here is both sides claim that this is their land, and both sides claim that this side occupied our land, and this is our land by birthright. Period. Period. And these claims are based on history, at least perceived history from each side's view, and it is based on religion. Each side's religion basically gives them the right to the land. Okay, and so the Israelis will say, this land's been ours for 3,000, 4,000, 2,000 years, whatever, thousands of years, let's say. And then the Palestinians say, hey, we've lived here. They've kicked us out, and they established their state, and in 1948 they declared it as a state, and so they occupied it. They're occupiers. So both sides say, this is our land, get out, or the more so-called moderate ones will say, no, it's okay, you can live with us, we don't hate Jews, or we don't hate Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians. You can live with us just under our rule. That's the key, under our rule. Okay, so that's the more moderate. There is it's such a complex issue, right? So this is briefly what it is in a nutshell, and both sides are fighting. So I'm gonna try to go beyond the current conflict. Okay, I'm trying to point out the full view of it. So let's put it out there. This is, I think, pretty obvious. Let's start with the obvious. Jews have always been there. Okay, historically speaking, that piece of land, roughly, was called Judea. Judea, right? Historically, Jews have always been there. However, since the destruction of the Second Temple, which I believe happened in 71 AD by the Romans, the Jews didn't exactly get expelled out of Jerusalem and out of the so-called Holy Land, but they experienced an exodus, slowly bleeding out. But there was always Jews there. Okay, during the Muslim rule, there was always Jews. But you have to understand something about this land. It's been occupied just like many other different lands. But this land specifically has been occupied by every imaginable occupier possible due to its location. Okay, the Romans occupied it for God knows how long. The Persians occupied it for God knows how long. Then before them, there was the Assyrians and the Babylonians and blah 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 blah. Okay, and then the Arabs came as Muslims under the rule of Islam, and then the Arabs got kicked out. The Turks came in, and the Ottomans. It's like a soup, right? At the time Israel became a state, before that, it was a land occupied by, or occupied or conquered. Let's call it conquered. Let's call it for what it is. Let's just see it for what it is. This is history. Conqueror comes in, it becomes our land. Another conqueror comes in, becomes their land, and on it goes. Let's just call it for what it is, okay? The Ottomans were there until after World War II, right? The Ottoman Empire completely collapsed. It was already on a downfall. It was already on a decline. The Ottoman Empire collapsed 1918 after World War II, and then it kind of became, okay, the Jews were already coming in and immigrating. That started in the late 1800s. That was fueled by Zionism. We'll talk about that in a second. Zionism is essentially Jews need a homeland, and then they picked Jerusalem, saying this is our holy land, this is where we are, we want to come back home. there were still Jews there, just a small number at the time in the 1800s. So World War One, post World War One, pretty sensitive time, you know. Jews were already immigrating, you know. They were already immigrating into this land. I'm gonna call it, just for the sake of this video, I'm gonna call it the Holy Land. Okay, just the Holy Land, because everybody thinks it's the Holy Land, so I'm gonna call it the Holy Land. So, but then there was, you know, a lot of Palestinians. Now, the state of Palestine, just like virtually every state at the time, post World War One, there was a crazy fad called nationalism. So everybody said, well, we want to create our own country. All right, so the idea of Palestine started to pick up momentum, but so did the idea of Israel. Okay, so that's kind of what happened in, you know, relatively recent times. So to summarize that, is to the best of my ability, the Jewish claim, the Israeli claim, says this is our land. It's been our land for thousands of years. We have been kicked out of it. We have gone through an exodus. We continuously experienced discrimination wherever we went, which is true. Okay. And in the late 1800s, there was a movement called Zionism. There was a sentiment, let's say, saying the Jewish people need a land. We must come back to the Holy Land, our land, the land of Judea, the land of Abraham, the promised land by God. God said, this is your land, so this is the promised land that God promised us. So in the late 1800s, immigration began to happen from Jews all over the world, but the initial wave was Jews from Europe. Okay, that's the Jewish claim. By birthright, by God's will, by God's word, by God's promise. We've been promised this. Moses promised us, Abraham promised us, this is our land, our land. Okay, God promised us. And then you have the Palestinian Arab Muslim claim that says, we've been living here. Well, this is our land. We've been living here, right? Look around you. It's a majority Arab Muslim population. And there are Christian Palestinians, by the way, but the majority is Muslim. So their claim is, let's say, more simplistic for the sake of this particular argument. It's more simplistic, isn't it? Hey, we've been living here, right? It's more of a present moment claim. We are here. Look, most of us. Yeah, there's some Jews in here, but like it's like 90% or whatever the number is. But hey, you know, this is clearly our land. So why are you coming in and taking this from us? So that's as simple as that. And so this is where we have to take you back to that particular claim. Okay, so we know that, yes, historically, thousands of years ago, we know that was, you know, the land of the Jews. That's where Jews lived for so long, and it's not like they ever completely left that land, but, you know, they basically, most of them, there was barely any Jews at some point. Okay, now to go back to where that land became Arab Muslim Palestinian land, is simply when Islam was born, really, which was in the 6th, 7th century, whatever it is. And yeah, so the Muslims went on a rampage of conquests, and they conquered the Arabia, which is modern day Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, and then they expanded further into modern day Iraq, modern day Persia, and then modern day Levant. Levant would be Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and modern day Palestine. Okay, that land before that was under the rule of the Byzantines. It was Christian land. So when did that happen? About 1400 years ago. So before 1400 years ago, there was not even the concept of Muslim. And actually the land was not really, the people didn't really speak Arabic. So there were Arab tribes living in that region, but really they were under the rule of the Byzantines. And there were several different languages spoken there, Aramaic, several different languages in the Holy Land, okay? But the concept of I am Arab, I am Muslim wasn't there 1400 years ago, first of all. And then again, the concept of Arab, it wasn't really a thing. It was tribes. It was tribes. It was, it was more of a tribal consciousness rather than a national consciousness. This idea of my country is a new idea, very new idea. It's the birth. It's the child of the 20th century. Okay, so that's really where it happened. So really, when it became, Arab Palestinian land, but even then, actually, not too long after that, the Ottomans came and conquered it. But nevertheless, since the time Islam came in there and Arabized and Muslimized the region, that land, strictly speaking, has become, because that's how it is, conquests. That land has become Arab land. Again, the concept of Palestine is, again, a new concept, like all these other nationalistic concepts. Like, take the country of Italy, the identity. I'm just using an example. Before the 1800s, there was no such thing as I'm Italian. There was I'm Venetian from Venice. I am from Fiorenza, from Florence. I'm Florentine. I am Roman. There was no really the concept of Italian. So you got to keep in mind all these like ideologies and things. A lot of them are so new to us, these concepts. Okay, so there is the two claims. This is the Palestinians saying, well, we've been here, we've been here. And then the Jews saying, well, no, we've been here longer. And both sides say God promised us this. The Jews more so. To the Jews, the Holy Land is let's say more holy. To the Muslims, it's more so about Mecca. In fact, Muhammad told the people to change the direction of prayer from looking at Jerusalem to looking at the Kaaba in Mecca. Okay, so it's not as holy, but still holy. Okay, but to the Jews, it's like, whoa, right? So the Jews say we've been here longer. We're just coming back to our land. Palestinians say, no, but look, we're living here. It's present day consciousness. We're living here, right? And so both sides are fighting over that, right? Pretty absurd if you ask me. Now, this is important. This is extremely important. I want to really bring this to your awareness, okay? And that is, if you look at the late 1800s and you look at the movement of Zionism and you look at the immigration of Jewish people into the Holy Land, and you follow the money, right? That's the saying, follow the money. If you follow the money, you will see a certain character that is part of a very dubious and shady family. That character is known as the Baron Rothschild. Look in, and I have to be careful with my language here, so I'm gonna call him Rothschild. Okay, I'm gonna try because I don't want to get demonetized, and I don't want to get in trouble with the YouTube authorities, right? So, look up the Baron Rothschild. The Baron Rothschild, just like all his fellow Rothschilds, are extremely rich, the richest family in the entire world, and they control virtually every bank out there. Every central bank, they control the money, period, which really means they control the world. So, this is public knowledge. This is not conspiracy theory. Look it up right now. Go look up the Baron Rothschild. Just spell his name, the actual name. If you don't find him, because there's a bunch of them, just look up something like Israel, the Baron Rothschild, or something like that, right? You'll find. Anyway, he funded the movement. Okay, he funded it. He was a heavy proponent of the Jews coming back to this land, but he really wanted it to happen. And then, gets better. Look up the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration is a declaration that was basically written by Balfour, which represented the British government, addressed to, guess who? Lord Rothschild of, what was his name? Walter, I believe, right? So it was actually, if you look up the Balfour Declaration, it's an actual official document from the British government, with Balfour acting on the behalf of the British government, not promising the Jewish people, promising Lord Rothschild the establishment of a Jewish state in the Holy Land. Why on earth would you write that to the Red Shield. Why on earth would you write that to them? I mean, aren't you addressing the Jewish people? However, supposedly, the Red Shield family were acting on the behalf, because they're so benevolent, on the behalf of the Jewish people, which is complete, utter nonsense, because these people are not actually Jewish. They're not. To them, to these people, this is what, like, to me, this isn't about Israeli, Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, Jewish. It isn't about that. You have to look at the people that are playing the chess game here. They don't actually care. They don't care for the Jewish people. They're using the Jewish people. They're not, and I'm gonna tell you why they're not actually Jewish to begin with. Okay, these people have a different religion, but they're massive. They're pretending. Now, everything, by the way, everything that I just told you up to this point is 100% public knowledge. It's not some conspiracy theory. Look it up. Look up the Balfour Declaration. Literally, the first thing in it is, "Dear Lord Red Shield." It's addressed to the Red Shield. So, very important to establish that the state of Israel was heavily funded, almost entirely funded and pushed by the Red Shield family. And if you know anything about the Red Shield family, it is basically Satan incarnated in flesh. That's really what the Red Shield family is. Okay, and so they are acting on the behalf of the Jewish people, but they're using them as a pawn. They're using them as a pawn because they actually have their own religion. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Okay, but up to this point, everything that I said is 100% public knowledge, no conspiracies, nothing. Look it up, folks. Okay, and all you have to do is do some research on the Red Shield family to understand who we're dealing with here. So right off the bat, we know that the existence of the state is shady. Why did it come to be? There is some shady... Okay, look, I'm not belittling the claim of the Jewish people. I'm not belittling their struggles and their discrimination and their search for a land. They wanted a land. I'm actually not. I'm pointing out to who of the motives, because you got to follow the money here. I'm pointing out that there is some very shady and dubious intentions behind the state, the existence of the state of Israel. The people who wanted it to exist, the people who were hard pushing for it and promoting it through the press, through money, through everything, because they control all of that. Okay, now what I'm about to tell you here is some stuff that if you're really interested in, it's not exactly public knowledge. This is where we get into the conspiracy theory realm. Okay, I'm trying to be as fair to the audience as possible. I'm telling you everything I just told you right now. You can go look it up yourself. It's public knowledge. Like, it is 100% public knowledge. Okay, now what I'm about to tell you here, it requires independent research. It requires a lot of connecting the dots. You use a little bit of Wikipedia, a little bit of Google, a little bit of your own independent research, and a little bit of connecting the dots and, just critical thinking. Okay, if you now interested to find out where this Red Shield family comes from, who they are, what are their motives, and you actually connect all these different things and you do your independent research along with mainstream research, Wikipedia, etc., you'll find something along the lines of these people originate from a people called the Khazars. The Khazar was a state in like between year 600 and 1000, something like they exist, like they were there. They established a state for themselves at the time for a good 300-400 years, between about 600 AD to 1000 AD, something like that. Okay, they are people actually interesting. So since the fall of the Second Temple in 71 AD, only 2 states that were Jewish have been established and recognized by their neighbors, etc. Israel, as we know it today, and Khazar, in that time period that I just mentioned. This is interesting. If you start to dig, and again, you have to do some Wikipedia, some this, some that, some independent research, you'll see this actually was also a Jewish state. But there was something very interesting about it. This was, so the Khazars are, even the name gives it away, Turkic people. But really, when you search it, and you can find this specific piece here you can find it on Google. They were a multi-ethnic people. Actually, they weren't just Turkic people. They were a multi-ethnic people, and there was actually like two they called certain parts of the Khazars were called white Khazars, and certain were called black Khazars. Some were darker skinned, as you would expect from Turkic people, and then some were actually white. And there are Arab, because the Arabs at the time were the Arab Muslims at that time between 600 AD and 1000 AD. They were sort of the leading scholars. If you look up and read some of their sources, they will say the ruling class particularly was white. They had blue eyes and red hair. I'm just literally pointing out what the Arab sources said. Okay, so they weren't necessarily, these Khazars weren't necessarily just like Turkic people. No, they were the only Jewish state since the fall of the Second Temple, other than Israel, that was actually Jewish. Now, they weren't always Jewish, but they converted to Judaism. And the sources that I read, and this piece here you can also find on just Google, is they sort of were pressured by their neighboring Rus, which would be, I guess, the forefathers of the modern day Russian peoples. They were pressured to convert because they had their own. Actually, the reason why they were pressured is they had their own weird religion. Okay, this is where we'll get into this now. But they were pressured by their Christian neighbors. Hey, look, just convert to Islam or Judaism or Christianity because you guys are weird and you guys are doing weird shit. And so they converted on paper because for political reasons. However, they actually continued to practice their real religion. This is where and so if you follow the history, you'll see that the Rothschild family is actually from there. Okay, they're actually Khazarians who converted to Judaism for their own purposes, for political reasons. And so, what is that secret religion that they actually continue to practice? It's Satanism. It's ancient Babylonian black magic, Baal worship. Guys, now again, we're getting into some public knowledge here. Look up Baal. Look up Baal worship. Look up how the deity Baal was worshipped in ancient Babylonia. And follow. Now, this other stuff you have to do independent research. And when you do your independent research, you're going to come across some very interesting information that shows that these people, the Khazarian ruling family, are actually people who originate from Babylon, from ancient Babylon, particularly the ruling elites. They continue to be the ruling elites, just of a different peoples. That's why they were mixed. There was white Khazarians and dark-skinned Khazarians. And so they continued to worship who? Baal, which is really just Moloch, Baal, Satan. They continued to worship Satan. And they were pressured by their Rus neighbors to convert because they were stealing their kids. They were doing weird child sacrifice, weird shit. And now this part here you can find, it's public knowledge, it's on Google. These people, the Khazarians, before they converted to Judaism for political reasons, they were actually doing child sacrifice rituals. You find this on Google, this particularly. Okay, again, some of this you have to do independent research also. It's not easy to find on Google. Google, there's barely anything really on Google, the deep stuff. Okay, and you have to connect the dots also, collect different sources. So to sort of summarize all this madness here, so you have this Rothschild family and all the other bloodlines that are essentially in control of the institutions of the world and everything. They've converted to Judaism back when they were as Khazarians, as the ruling family of Khazarians, for political reasons. But they actually, in secret, continued to worship Baal, continued to worship Satan, continued to do the child sacrifice and these weird rituals. And now, just like they were as Khazarians, now they continue to do the same, just they're in-name Jews. Now, I don't know why they are interested in establishing this state for themselves. And they're using the Jews as pawns. And by the way, the whole thing with the Jewish, I'm trying to, just in case, avoid using that word, the tragedy that the Jews have gone through, the Jewish people have gone through in World War II. It's a tragedy. That was a sacrifice so that they can have a stronger claim to the state of Israel. So they run the state of Israel, basically. They run it. And the people are just the people. They're just people like you and I, just living daily life, and they're just people. But they use the people as a pawn, and so they sanctioned the horrific tragedy that happened, because they pretty much fund both sides of the war. Yeah, they said, okay, here, Hitler, why don't you do your thing with the Jews? We don't care for them, really. We just want to establish our state, and we want a strong claim. So, by you killing a bunch of them, we can, it looks better for our resume that, hey, the Jewish people really need a state now, so we could establish our state. They don't care, man. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about the Jewish people. They don't. We're all pawns in their game. Okay? They will use any name. Deception is their strongest weapon. Okay? And if they have to act like Jews and use the Jewish cause as a means to an end, they will do it. And they will do it through the blood, sweat, and tears of others. Okay, so I wanted to cover this. I know it's pretty controversial. This is, you're gonna go watch a bunch of videos on this conflict. You're never gonna hear anybody talk about this. Because some of this stuff is not actually public knowledge. You have to actually really dig deep and connect the dots, not just dig deep, and look at different sources. Okay? So there is that part. Now I want to go and move to the other side again, because we've been swinging back and forth between this side and that side. Now, let's move to the Palestinians who claim that this is our land. Now, I want to just say something. First of all, the majority of Palestinians right now are Muslims, right? And as we know, I'm trying to avoid using their name, because actually somebody else that I was watching, they had their videos demonetized. The people, let's just say it, I don't care. Hamas, right? Hamas. They are a Muslim militia that wants to they want to eradicate all Jewish people, right? Now they they are just following what the wonderful founder of Islam, Uncle Mo, ho ho ho. They're just following what he said. I'm gonna read you something here, straight from the Hadith. For those people that are unfamiliar, let's just put in the password. For those of you unfamiliar, most Muslims are Sunni, 90% Sunni. They follow the Sunnah. So basically they follow the Quran, and they follow the sayings of the Prophet, the Hadith. This would be the equivalent, I may be wrong on that, they may be the equivalent of like the Talmud for Jews, right? The Torah is like the main thing, the Quran's the main thing, and then you have like the Talmud, right? It's kind of the equivalent, not really, but kind of. But basically these are all sayings, authentic. They're called authentic sayings if they are from Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Okay? So let's just, to summarize it for you before reading this. This is considered by 90% of Muslims to be legit canon, doctrine. Okay? Islam. And this is what Uncle Momo ho 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 said. So, I'm not going to read it in Arabic, just read it to you guys in English. The last hour, so this is what Prophet, so-called Prophet, Uncle Momo Mohohoho said, the last hour would not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, "Oh Muslim, oh the servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." This is what Uncle Momo Momo Ho 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 said. He said that. So, in the doctrine of Muslims, is the eradication of the Jewish people. That's pretty messed up, man. That's pretty messed up. You see what we're dealing with here? We are dealing with what's that saying? An unstoppable force and an immovable object. That's what we're dealing with. It. This is why this is so complicated, and there seems to be virtually no solution to it. Because on one side, you have the Red Shield family basically fueling all of this, right? And don't tell, like, I mean, you really think that probably the most sophisticated army in the world, at least top 5, at least, you really think a bunch of dudes paraglided and did all of this without their knowledge? Somebody let the screws loose on purpose. Another sacrifice of so-called your own people. They're not really your own people. You just use them as a pawn for your own ends, really. So on one side you have the unstoppable force, the Red Shield family and the rest of the bloodlines and the rest of the Babylonian Baal worshippers, okay? On one side, the unstoppable force, and then you have the immovable object. The immovable object is the other side, with following the doctrine saying we will eradicate all Jews. So the immovable object would be the doctrine of Uncle Momo Ho 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 Ho, okay, which is really messed up. It's really messed up. I don't understand where people say like Islam is a religion of peace. Where do you get the kahunas to say that? Have you read the canon? Have you read, like, when I say canon, I mean Quran and Hadith. Have you read some of the horrific, violent things in there? And these are things like, when I grew up, this was so important and still is important. The rhetoric, you would go pray on Fridays in the mosques, and you would hear the shuyukh, the sheikhs, this and that. Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال لا تقوم الساعة حتى you guys kill all the Jews. I mean, what the hell, man? Okay, so on one side you got the Red Shield family. We're getting this for our own reason, for so-called our Jewish people, right? They're not really Jews. They converted back in the days as Khazars. They converted for political reasons, and then they escaped. By the way, what I forgot to mention is the Khazars escaped to Europe, and then they basically were because they couldn't escape with their actual real identity, the real Babylonian Baal worshipping religion. So they continued to be Jews. So it was also a survival tactic. Okay, so on that's one side. On the other side, you get people following this absolutely dangerous and violent doctrine. And so you got so much hate. You got so much hate between both sides, which are really just being used as pawns. Really, they're just being used as pawns. Now, if you actually look what's happening on the ground, it's heartbreaking, man. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And I'm not talking about right now. I'm talking about since this whole conflict came to be, which was, it really started before World War I, but it really began to take a full effect after World War I. In fact, between the time of World War I and World War II, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, which is like the most important figure at the time for the Arab Muslim Palestinians, he rubbed elbows and shook hands with Hitler. He did. Look it up. That's public knowledge, folks. Right? Because Hitler said, we're gonna, take care, we're gonna do the final solution bullshit. And the Grand Mufti, who represented the Arab Muslim Palestinians at the time, was pretty hyped up, pretty excited about it. So you could see that this conflict really began, from both sides, really began to escalate since then. Now, you could make the argument as a Palestinian and say, but, they've been we're just responding. Like, we're just responding. Did you see what they've been doing to us since they've came to this land? And like, do you see the conditions in Gaza? Do you see the conditions in the Difa Gharbiyya, which is, you know, the West Banks? Do you see what we're going through East Jerusalem, right? No denying it. The way people are treated there, horrible, horrible. Okay, now the Arabs inside Israel are treated better. I don't know too much about them. I know more about the way they are treated um, in those areas, which is a no-no. I don't know how the Arabs in Israel are treated. I can't comment on that. Okay, there's about 20% Arab, primarily Muslim Palestinians, who actually are pretty much neutralized at this point, right? I think they have the Israeli citizen, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, forgive me. Okay, they're about 20% of the population. Not too bad. That's a decent chunk, and that, at least seemingly from the outside view, they seem to be living okay. They seem to be doing okay, but you hear they're still second-class citizens. Who knows? I don't know. Okay, so the argument is, well, but look, like, we're really treated horribly. We're just reacting. Okay, now you don't tell me that what Hamas did is a reaction. They raped, man. They raped and paraded a woman. Right now in Islam, by the way, the religion of peace, you're allowed to rape women if it's war. You're allowed to rape them. You're allowed to take them as sex slaves. And in fact, Uncle Momo did a bunch of that. A bunch of that, guys. He was a slave master. He was a slave master. Okay, so I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna stop talking here. At the end of the day, who pays the price? The civilians, right? It really is the civilians who pay the price, and it's unfortunate. And yeah, it's really unfortunate that the civilians have to pay the price, man. It's horrific, man. Imagine you're there right now. Imagine you're there in Gaza. Imagine you were there when those people paraglided and you were in that festival. Imagine, I mean, whew, man, no human should have to go through that. No human should have to go through that. I don't care what you are. I don't care who you represent or this or that. No human should have to go through that. And yeah, again, by no means this is a complete account. By no means. I mean, this is so complex. I'm gonna need days, and I'm gonna need years of further research, further contemplation to even be able to attempt to actually present a complete account of the situation. And I know if you're on either side, you're gonna feel like I've been more on this side or that. I'm not. I'm on nobody's side. I actually talked, quote unquote, talked shit about this and about that. Really, I can't be on anybody's side in this. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? I mean, you kind of have to be. The only way I can see you taking sides in this conflict, if you're there, if like I can understand the mindset, the consciousness of an Israeli person right now. I can understand why you would take the Israeli side, because like, look at what Hamas did. But I can also understand if I'm inside there, or if I'm a refugee, if I have family there, I can understand. And that's not a good thing to take sides in this case. But in such an emotionally charged state, you kind of almost have to take sides, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But if you're an outsider, it's, how do you take sides in this? How do you take sides? How do you have the kahunas to take sides? You can't. You can't. You watched another human tragedy. Another human tragedy. And the reason why I really wanted to, I think I emphasized in this video on the connection of the Red Shield family to the whole thing. Because guys, every freaking major war that happened in modern history, they are 100% behind it since the Napoleonic Wars. You may call me a conspiracy theorist, blah 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 blah. You gotta connect the dots. Like, this is not hard information to find, and a lot of it is public. A lot of it is public, guys. A lot of what I said here is public. Some of it, okay, you have to do independent research. Okay, but honestly, a lot of what I said here is also public information, and I wanted to emphasize on that. Just to understand that this game is not about people. It's beyond that. There are people that have completely different agendas than the actual well-being of the Jewish people or the Palestinian people. They don't care. They don't care. Okay? That's about it. Oof, man, my heart, my sentiment goes to all the innocent people. All the innocent people. Um, this is gonna get bad. This is gonna get ugly. Okay, I did want to talk about something. Nah, you know what? That's for a different video. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's a pragmatic solution, because I want a pragmatic solution. Like, what do we do? I'm not talking about like some pipe dream. Everyone gotta, you know, let go and forgive. That no, 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 no. We need a practical solution. But perhaps that's gonna be a different video. I have to think about what's a practical solution for this. Okay, blessings, and I'll see you guys in the next video.